the idea that maybe we won't need stories in the resurrection. Where do you fall on this?
No, absolutely we will need stories.
Yeah.
There's no question that we'll need stories.
I guess the question is, is the story going to get better and better as we go? Or do we reach sort of timeless, blissed out state where time disappears? And it seems pretty clear that as created creatures with bodies.
Blissed out state?
That sounds awful. Yeah. It's Hindu.
Yeah. Yuck. I find it dumb. So I think it's as dumb as caterpillars saying, but will we actually like have narratives when we're butterflies? Like, will we do anything?
Yeah.
Actually, because I'm doing a lot right now as a caterpillar.
Just pounding leaves.
It's like, no, I'm just eating a ton. But when I turn to soup and am remade a butterfly, will I even do anything once I'm totally beautiful and amazing?
Yeah.
No longer this corpulent little worm. Will I even do anything? It's like, yeah, you're gonna fly to Mexico. It's gonna be amazing.
That's a long way.
There's a whole big Odyssean trek for you ahead.
Like the drums last bang, like the stars last beam, giving everything, nothing in between. We still
Stories are soul food.
Yeah.
The podcast and show.
Yeah, podcast and show.
We still wear the headphones because it's just the podcast. You caught us musing on whether Kamala is going to get yanked, as Walter Kern says, whether she might be president for a week, as Nate hopes.
I really want her to be the first female president in the United States for a month or two.
Yeah.
And I think they'll do it the instant they actually see or believe that she'd have an advantage as sitting president.
Right.
She's already president, guys. Just give her a shot.
Right.
Do you really want to spend another $50 million on another inauguration? We just did one.
Yeah, they suddenly become fiscally conservative.
I don't know. Are we only talking about politics today?
No, we weren't. We were going to talk about
something else.
We were going to talk about the Olympics. A couple questions.
Let's talk about something that matters.
Yeah. Well, okay. Ashtown burials. So I have a question that seemed like the sort of question one of my sons might ask. So you just get ready for that. Very literal. Very literal question.
A very literal question.
Yeah. Okay. Question from Joshua that has been a blister on his brain for the past 2 weeks. In the Ashtown burial series, whoever holds the dragon's tooth cannot die. However, the dragon's tooth can slay that which cannot die. Suppose the holder accidentally tripped and impaled himself.
He'd be dead.
He'd be dead?
Yeah.
So that takes priority. The tooth takes priority.
Well, yeah.
Okay. That was easy.
Yeah.
There's no sort of rock too big, you can't lift it situation with the dragon's tooth and immortality.
No. He would let go of the tooth because he's stabbing himself and he'd die.
Because it would hurt.
Yeah.
To be stabbed. And I'm sure Josh would want me to say this, so what if he held on to it really
just infinitely? If he held on to it infinitely?
Yeah. Schrodinger's cat, the Ashtown
Yeah,
burials.
no, I've thought about this. And
see, I knew you had.
And,
you're such an engineering world builder that I was like,
my answer is that you'd die.
Okay. So the killing there is more fundamental than the life-giving aspect of it.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why you know this is because others with transmortality, with immortality, are afraid of the tooth and can be destroyed by the tooth. They have access to immortality via other means than the tooth, right? Yep. So, but it's Reaper's blade status trumps its life-giving status.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. So that's
as a weapon.
So that's why I want that direction and created that consistency. So if it can kill someone who's immortal, then it can kill someone who's immortal. Mm-hmm. So Cyrus has immortality. He's not a transmortal. He hasn't been transformed, but he has immortality by means of bearing the tooth. Mm-hmm. And yet the tooth could still take that from him, just like it could take life from Gilgamesh.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So you didn't even need to ask that question, Joshua. You could have thought
through the
looked
for internal coherence in the narrative.
And the point when you don't find that, that's when the podcast gets interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a valid question.
Right. Someone sent this question in, a question also based on death and resurrection, a question about storytelling and the resurrection.
Okay.
I believe this is from The Latest Man Rampant, when one of the Dougs, I don't know which is which, one of the Dougs posed that our life in this world will provide fodder for storytelling in the resurrection. The other Doug posited the idea that maybe we won't need stories in the resurrection. Where do you fall on this?
That sounds like something that 10 April would say just because he was smoking something.
That was my guess as well. This is it.
Maybe just like throw it out. Maybe we won't need stories. No,
Right.
Absolutely we will need stories.
Yeah.
There's no question that we'll need stories.
I guess the question is, is the story going to get better and better as we go? Or do we reach sort of timeless, blissed out state where time disappears? And it seems pretty clear that as created creatures with bodies.
Blissed out state?
That sounds awful. Yeah. It's Hindu.
Yeah. Yuck.
I guess the question, is there a way, do you think, that we're going to be able to look back on our rise, fall, and our situations in this past life, retell them now, or are we going to want to move on from this situation, write new ones?
I mean,
further up the waterfall. I know we're speculating. Here,
I don't think we are. I find it dumb. So I think it's as dumb as caterpillars saying, but will we actually like have narratives when we're butterflies? Like, will we do anything?
Yeah.
Actually, because I'm doing a lot right now as a caterpillar.
Just pounding leaves.
It's like, no, I'm just eating a ton. But when I turn to soup and am remade a butterfly,
mm-hmm.
will I even do anything once I'm totally beautiful and amazing?
Yeah.
No longer this corpulent little worm. Will I even do anything? It's like, yeah, you're going to fly to Mexico. It's going to be amazing.
That's a long way.
There's a whole big Odyssean trek for you ahead, little worm, once you have the power of flight. A dragonfly worried as a nymph. But will I even do anything? Will I just be in a blissed out state once I crawl up the reed into the sun and am made into an amazing piston-fired helicopter?
Yeah.
I mean, I do so much now in this little puddle where I eat mosquito babies. Will I even do anything once I have the power of flight, 360 vision, and perfect acceleration and deceleration? It's like, yeah, you're going to do all sorts of things. So I mean, we're in the same place. Like, but will we do anything? Like,
well, sure, because you talk about us being around the glassy sea and singing all the time. That's our caterpillar's view of the end times, and it is something that you read it to your kids, and your kids are like, "Is that what I'm going to be doing in heaven?" And you're like, "Some of it."
No, yeah, it's not like there won't be worship. Of course, there's going to be worship, but there's a lot to do. Mm-hmm. There's a heck of a lot to do. So
that's the answer.
Like, I mean, I can't. What will you do when you've been given incorruptible flesh? When you'll have pain tolerance way beyond what you currently have? What will you do when you're no longer a little self-pitying whiner? I mean, will there be anything to do? It's like,
when you put it that, you put it that way.
So, I mean, anyway, yeah, I think our resurrected bodies, what we will have to do is going to be unending.
Because we've got a new creation, a new earth, right?
New heavens, new earth, new bodies.
Presumably they're not.
And here's the question. Simple question. In your resurrected body, will you be a perfect image of God?
Yeah, no way.
No.
That's heretical, in fact.
Yeah, no. But is it your job to try to image God more and more perfectly every day? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So right now, our struggle is all about sin. It's all about being these little worms that just are pounding milkweed, just pounding down leaves. Then we'll have to fly. We'll have to do all sorts of things that we can't even imagine now. And this is something I'm working on, in a book called Never Home, Brian.
Wow. It thrills me to hear it.
Yeah. So there's my third work of nonfiction after Tilt-A-Whirl and Death by Living is called Never Home and is about this exact subject.
Wow.
So anyway.
So there's a little sneak peek.
Yeah. So I think about this. This is like God has patterns. There's an author that we know, and we can look at what he does. And when you were begotten, like after the moment of conception, it's like you could have easily been asking yourself, but what will I even do? Like, I do so much right now?
After birth, yeah.
I daydream. I'm warm. I'm filled. Like
I sometimes hear
I don't have to breathe.
voices going, whoop, 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 whoop.
I hear voices. I've got this percussive heartbeat of my mother. It's like, but what will I even do? What is there to do?
Yeah. I think you've referenced that C.S. Lewis quote, when we look at the new heavens and the new earth and we're failing to imagine how anything could be better than this. The same way a child is like.
The same way a dragonfly nymph, the same way a caterpillar, the same way a child could not imagine.
Right.
And I had a story concept I was working on with a friend. We couldn't decide whether to do it as like graphic novel or try to do it as a TV show or something else like that, where the concept was basically life expectancies were around 18, just 18 years old. Like the total catastrophic collapse of life expectancies on the planet Earth. And so people equate puberty with old age and death.
Wow.
Where you get to a place where a boy starts to have hair on his face and everybody's like, oh, he's going to die soon. They equate all the things that are the signs for us of just beginning are equated with the end. And so people are trying to hide their age, at 15, 16, they're trying to hide because by the time you have a full beard, you're basically dead.
Yeah.
You're not, and everybody's raised by not their parents, so right. It's like you're raised
by peers.
Yeah. You're being raised by 12-year-olds and
now,
13-year-olds because your parents are dead now. And it's just this totally dysfunctional society that has found new function. It has all its rhythms and everything else, but nobody really lives past 18. And when people do, they're exiled and seen as monsters. So if somebody actually lives to 35 and has full-grown man muscles and height and strength and power and this big beard, it's like he's monstrous.
So the telos of the adult hasn't changed. They just never make it there.
Yeah. And so an adult shows up and it's like, this is awful. They put him out. They have to, like, he's got to be outside the camp is the worst. Terrifying. Yeah. This terrifying thing. And the way I came to this idea was thinking about basically the life expectancies pre-flood and how we have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
Like no conception of anything. Like what would it be like to be reaching further maturity at 450?
Yeah.
To be reaching further maturity at 600.
Yeah.
To have that kind of insight, like lived wisdom, and even access to the past. So how much knowledge, especially if we have dementia, we've got all these other things, but assume a completely intact mind that could go from the time of Shakespeare past now.
Yeah.
And the continuity that provides.
I mean, think about most education that we do. The classical education is all about that return to the sources that they started to find in the Renaissance. And what if you lived from then till now?
So the point was just realizing that we are total children. We are these teenagers who can't even imagine what it would be like to be 35. And that's awful. It's a horrible thing.
As a 35-year-old.
Yeah. But that was just sort of a what if concept I was playing with, but it was because we cannot imagine what waits in human development, in the development of a man, in the development of a woman,
right,
who can continue to mature and improve.
Yeah, think
for
of
centuries.
How good you could get at stuff. It's just kind of, it is crazy to think about. I mean, I think we were talking about.
Now, also think about less corruption, less like where we are. We've spiraled into this intense fragility, mental fragility, lack of focus. We're addicts, we're weaklings in all these ways. But take away all the temptation, take away all the futility and temptation, and add lifespan. and
that
health.
does nothing to what we can
It's
do.
like,
yeah.
what could be waiting for us over there? We don't know.
Right.
We have as little conception of that as does the caterpillar or the dragonfly nymph or the infant in the womb has conception about what's going to happen when they're 4. So we are in the womb in a very real way and with no idea of what's on the other side.
Yeah, I think we have that creaturely understanding that stasis equals death. Like if we're not moving,
Right.
we're dead. If something's not changing, something's very wrong. And that's very different from, well, I guess you wouldn't say God has stasis either. He's not some sort of sedentary prime
He's not
mover.
static, but he is immutable.
Yeah. And it is interesting to think about that. And it's sort of a reverse children of men almost. Instead of looking at the hope that is brought by children, you flipped it and are looking a bit at the gold of maturity or the wine, the full wheat of what it is to get old and how, what that would be taken away.
Mm-hmm. And so if you only ever tasted the malt in a still, and you didn't have the lifespan to experience the actual maturity of the whiskey, the malt's pretty awful.
Right.
Like this is not good. Like it doesn't make sense to us at all. And so when we look at a resurrected body, everything we hear about it, it's scary. Like if you really think about it, it's like, wait, I love this woman. I'm not going to be married to her.
Right.
It's like, but I don't, I don't know how to do that. But we were nymphs together. It's like, we don't know we just don't know what we're going to be made into other than we're going to be made into incorruptible flesh and a more perfect image of God without the curse, without the fall, without the curse of death.
But still evidence of, well, if we go by Jesus' body, still evidence of, the wounds, palm, side, which is crazy to think of as well.
No, we'll be the resurrected you'll be the resurrected person who lived this story. The idea that we won't have stories in heaven is ludicrous. That's that little cul-de-sac we drove into and got all distracted. Because we will have gotten there via story. Because B, there's the story of the gospel. There's the story of the history of the world. And then there's all the things we're going to do.
Right.
So.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. On to our...
easy peas.
We get to talk now some advice for soul food listeners.
Okay.
The people love to send us 2 sentences on their life and then have you tell them what to do next. Okay.
Whatever you're scared of, do that.
Right. I'm a 25-year-old Alaskan, holds a BA in biblical counseling, getting an MA in English Lit online. I've worked as a heavy equipment operator at a gold mine in Nome and currently working as a diesel mechanic in Anchorage. Doing a bunch of ministry stuff. He kind of thinks he needs to start a residential addiction center, but he also wants to write. Mm-hmm. He feels God's pleasure when he writes, like Eric Liddell. I think this is when he sent in that question after our Liddell episode. And he also wants to go to seminary. So he wants us to know, his friends are telling him, go to seminary. Writing doesn't matter. He thinks they're undervaluing writing. What should he do? How does he make this decision?
He should love God.
Yeah.
And do as he pleases.
That's great. So you think he needs to focus on what he wants to do?
Yeah.
Because he listed about 4 different things he's thinking about. And then I went ahead and threw in the MFA that you had founded as yet another option for not having to do an MA in Lit online, just to make sure he has more options.
This is basically kind of the situation where people have a lot of things they want to do. They feel a lot of tension between different desires, and so they're looking for an ought. They're looking for some kind of moral mandate.
Yeah.
It's not normally how it works. I mean, sometimes people really mess up. They make terrible decisions for their families. They go down foolish roads, or they sit still and let the storm overtake them in different ways. But when you have things where it's like, I really like basketball and I really like football, and I'm good at basketball and I'm good at football, and I could play basketball or I could play football at the next level, but I can't do both.
Right.
Like, okay. Like, decide which one you want to do more,
and then
do that, and do it to the glory of God. So it's pretty, it's pretty easy.
I think
and plenty of seminarians have been not at all called to seminary, and plenty of seminarians have also wanted to write and either get to it or don't get to it. So they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but
yeah,
it just seems like love God, do as you please.
You've mentioned this a lot to me, is that God doesn't open just one door so that you know which one to go through. It's often lots of doors will be closed, and then all of a sudden they all open, and you get to choose A, B, or C.
Yep.
And you don't get the benefit.
And your actual motivation and your actual heart's going to matter a lot in terms of which one you walk through. But those are the hard choices.
Yeah.
So it's easy when God gives you one opportunity. That's simple. When he gives you 3 or 4, you have to really live by faith.
Do you have any moments where you feel like there's is there like different careers that you were close to doing at your moment that
No, I've been steered heavily by God. So that's one of the other options is to just pray that he will slam doors on you and derail you if you're making the wrong choice. It's like, and then receive it. Don't bang your head on it. My whole theory of my career was that I'd be just a professor, and I would write in the summers. That was my entire theory of what I was going to do coming out of grad school. And then I just could not put that work together. And so I did teach at NSA quite a bit, but it was always scrap. I was never full-time. It was always piece together this and that and the other thing, and became a thing I was doing to help out the college as opposed to a thing that I needed to do, because to actually pay the bills, to actually make money, I had to sell books. I actually had to get book deals. I had to just pour myself into writing. And so writing just took over, and my whole theory of what I was going to do vanished.
Yeah.
So
that door was closed.
Yeah. My dad thought he was going to open bookstores.
Okay. So he wanted to imitate.
Yeah. He was going to open bookstores.
Yeah.
He was going to write and open bookstores, and he got stuck up front of a church holding a guitar after the pastor left. He was playing the guitar. The pastor was gone. They were looking for a new pastor to take the church, and he was the guy who led the music. So he had to preach because nobody else was going to. And they kept shopping around for a minister. And then, fast forward to right now, and he's still the pastor of that church. And it's gone through some real life cycle. So there's plenty of things you can think. There's plenty of things people can believe that they're supposed to do. And you should take the thing you want to do, and you should give it to God, and you should pursue it with passion and aggression, and set real aggressive goals and really pursue it. And then be ready to be steered. But as my dad has told me many times, and I don't know where he got it, might just been from him, is God does not steer parked cars.
So it's easy to sit in the middle of an intersection without taking any turns.
And look at all the different turns.
Which one do I turn?
And just wait and wait and wait. It's like, just go. Pick one. Go.
But as soon as you pick one, it becomes very clear if you did the wrong one. Because
all
the cars are coming towards you.
Did you do the right thing? Did you do the wrong thing?
Yeah.
Like move. Start moving. Go. And then pay attention for God's hands on the steering wheel. But I really did think like, okay, I'll be a professor. I'll do a lot of apologetics. I'll do a lot of lit. But other humans are involved in these things. So, I was an assistant lit teacher at NSA, and I really, really, really wanted to take the lit curriculum. And I taught Fairy Queen. Peter Lightheart was the lit professor, but he was too overloaded. He was going to be leaving. He didn't want to read the Fairy Queen. So I taught this Fairy Queen segment as almost like an audition for the lit job at NSA. And then the president at the time just kind of pivoted it away from lit. Like, oh, we're not going to do lit. We're doing this big survey course. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And he hired somebody else, hired a friend of mine. I was like, oh, okay, I'm not doing that. That's not happening. So I had one class, which was rhetoric and communication. So I taught that class as hard as I could. And I think I benefited from it a lot more than anybody else did. Just learned a lot through a decade plus of teaching communication and rhetoric, classical rhetoric. But that was nothing. That's not a job. That was just, I had a class. And so the job was writing.
This goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. That idea of perspective, when you look forward and trying to see where you are, would you expect there to be more tipping points in, as you're planning for, typical lifespan, 80 to 100 years, 70 to 90? What are you trying to plan for when those door moments come, or are you just trying to move each moment? I guess.
No, absolutely. And I would add this. One of the things that annoys me the most is, and sometimes it's heartbreaking, is watching people negotiate against themselves. It's like for you.
What do you mean by that?
So they want something, they feel called to something, but it seems unrealistic. They feel embarrassed to say it out loud. They're not flippant about it. Their parents think it's dumb. Their friends are like, okay, whatever. And so they constantly settle out of like a humility in scare quotes and kind of like a lack of faith. Honestly, I was just talking to an athlete of mine, just saying like, listen, if you want to compete at the next level, let God close the doors. Don't close the doors on yourself. Like, go for it. Because realistically, if you look back at my career and you say, which is more likely, that I would be able to get a teaching job or that I would get a 4-book deal with Random House?
Yeah, the teaching job.
The teaching job should be a little easier to land. And especially at a small growing college where I was an alumnus that my father had founded that needed more faculty. That should have been easy. It wasn't. It was easier to get a 4-book deal with Random House.
Fascinating.
And so, like, which way should I have gone? It's like, well, it's really easy to look at those two things and be like, well, I should go this way because that way there's going to be obstacles and resistance and friction. And this way it's going to be easy. I could just get a job. I can pay the bills. And then I can try to, on the side, do this other thing. It's like, well, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it actually, kind of works.
It works its way out. It's not that it's easy, but
in some ways it is. When you're dealing with human beings making decisions that influence your ability to do that, if you're where you're supposed to be in God's story, pursuing what you're supposed to be pursuing, yes, you will be able to do it. If you can't, then God doesn't want you to do it right now. So I had to kind of take that on the teaching side, be like, okay, I'll be this part-time rhetoric guy for a long time, and I'm going to go write novels. And then I'm going to write some features and work on some shows and, and have lightning kind of strike multiple times where it just should not have. And that's probably the weirdest thing to me is I'm not a person who got given a little thing and then I leveraged it and rolled it into a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I took that one thing and snowballed it into a career. It's like I had multiple lightning strikes on the writing side. Yeah. Where the odds just were very, very against me. Because I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. Where on the other side, pretty achievable. Like, this is something I should have been able to achieve. No, I was banging my head on a wall. Because the behavior of the other characters, the behavior of human beings, other characters in God's story, they can shut doors. They have access to doors and they can shut doors for you. Right. And they're not, it's not like, oh, this was an injustice. It's like, no, they're making other decisions and they're hiring other people and doing things. And I'm over here and this is where I'm going. And for some reason, like Netflix executives are making different decisions than, small town collegiate administrators. So it's a weird thing. When you go where you're supposed to go, when you do what you're supposed to be doing, you can expect the walls to fall down. Like they will fall down. If you're supposed to be marching there, the Red Sea parts.
Is that a lot? Not to Yeah. Is that a lot like how fiction works? It seems like, it seems like protagonists, are going to find their way through
the
difficulties.
Get through the labyrinth, get through the maze.
And you're going to find, I took the right turn or I took the wrong one, but it ended up right in the right way.
Yeah.
Stories.
I'm there right now with, character makes a choice based on a certain data, gets there. The data was completely false. And but he is where he's supposed to be for different reasons than he knew. And that is very much how it goes. I mean, that's just how the world works. I honestly think that God tricks us into things all the time.
What? Okay, you're gonna have to dig that. You mean because we're not seeing his perspective.
No,
at all.
What I also mean is like, so if we're in a building project right now, and as building projects are always hard, right? I've got a buddy with a big development project that's been really, really difficult. I told him the same thing. It's like, I think what you're doing matters. I think it's important. I think that if God had given you full disclosure on how hard it would be, you never would have done it.
I see.
Like you would have felt irresponsible.
Yeah.
It would have felt irresponsible to make that choice. But God shows you, a hand of cards and you're like, okay, I'm going this way. You go that way and suddenly like, oh boy, we're climbing mountains over here.
Okay.
That's just the way it is. So if you could see before you got married, if you could see the decades of your entire time together and all the trials and all the hardships and all the grief and all the struggle that you're going to experience because you loved deeply and sacrificed yourself in one direction for a long time. If he just showed you all the pain and all the hardship, it'd be very easy to say like, ooh, I don't like that death scene.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? He didn't show you your death scene for a reason.
Right.
It's like we don't get the full data. So if we're moving where we're supposed to be moving into the wilderness or at the Red Sea, in those cases, they could see the hardship they were directly and God removed it. Most of the time, we actually don't.
Well, I was going to laugh.
The ways being prepared for us.
Right.
And we get there and we don't really even know what obstacles we're going to face. But if we're going where we're supposed to be going, we're going to be fine.
That is kind of funny because Moses looked at getting the children of Israel out and thought getting them out of Egypt's the hard part.
Yep.
God didn't show him the 40 years he was going to be spending.
The double 40?
Yeah. Smart. He's going to go out. Yeah. Be a shepherd for 40 years in the wilderness and then take.
Let me tell you a little thing about your brother and the
people.
golden calf, Moses. You're going to get to see this. You're going to get to feel intense frustration.
Yeah.
Let me show you your failure and how you're not going to even get to see the promised land.
Yeah.
No, you don't get shown all of that in advance. So that's what I mean by I think God tricks us into things.
Moses is stressed out about getting the children of Israel out, and God's like, "Well, that's going to be the easy part of your story. That's going to take it's going to take all of a year."
And so God can show you something. So you could buy a house and be like, "This is the house, and we're getting it because man, this is such a steal. This house is such a steal. These people had no idea what they were sitting on." Sometimes God gives you a little chocolate pie moment like that. Sometimes he gives you something that looks like a little chocolate pie moment, and then he's like, "Guess what you get? You get to be perfected as a human and as a husband."
You're the chocolate pie.
Yeah, you are the one being refined here, not the house. And now you get to have this whole money pit experience. It's like that's as you grind on it. And that's what I mean. So tricking us into it, what I mean is gives us stories where he does not tell us everything in advance, because if he did, we'd be scared and paralyzed and would probably run the other direction.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
That's interesting. I was thinking of Joshua too, with the huge task of like, I have to kill these 7 nations, right?
Yeah.
Everybody needs to die. And it did feel like Joshua was wise enough to know exactly how it was going to go. Because he gives them all that warning in Joshua chapter 1 of like, hey, you're going to forget everything I'm telling you. God is going to punish you big time for it. And it's going to be awful. And do you still want to do this? And all the people rightly said, yes, we do. But it's kind of, it's that moment of foresight there is a little sad.
Yeah, it is. And I've commented before about the danger of the knowledge of good and evil. Like that's the thing our frame was not prepared for.
Right.
Like imagine
I mean, Moses didn't even know his grandson was going to be the one leading the tribe of Dan off into their apostasy in northern Israel, which is a brutal one there.
Whoopsies. Yikes. Yeah. So if you imagine, let's say there's a nice Christian girl and she's got, 3 or 4 different guys who are pursuing her. Or we could flip it and say there's a Christian guy who's assessing, 3 or 4 different girls that he really respects and finds attractive and deciding who to really pursue. It's God's kindness not to give him a complete vision of the entirety of what his life would look like in each scenario.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, you're not meant for that.
No. It's like that's just the crushing weight of knowledge. That's just knowledge. The knowledge of good and evil. So if I married this girl, if I really pursued her, what would happen? Like what would every single detail? I want to know my kids, how talented would they be? How much money am I going to make? What's retirement going to look like?
Sure.
And so on. There's in Masters of the Air where they kind of riff on these different characters who are in this airborne division in England, and it's not one big arc, but they follow these particular characters through their journey through World War II. Then they tell you what happened for some of these guys afterwards, and some of them had really amazing arcs that went a long time, and others had bitter heartbreak after they survived the war. Or this guy got married to the girl you see in the show that he really, really loved, and she just died suddenly. And he never remarried. Like they were married for a few years, and that was it. That was the one for him, and that was all. So if he got shown that, and he's committed, he's put a ring on this girl's finger, and he suddenly sees, wow, I'm gonna have to get really good at carrying grief if I go down this road. Like, oh boy, really? Are we going to raise our hand? We're always going to vote for the chocolate pie option, not necessarily for the option that's best for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much Pandora's box, the situation there of like, you got to have hope. And
but think of it as knowledge of good and evil.
Right.
So you make your choices by faith and you pursue them aggressively in a way that honors God and expect him to tell a story that is, I'm very much with Leibniz in the best of all possible worlds scenario.
Okay.
Expect it to be a part, a thread in the tapestry that is the best story that could be told. So, go for it, grind. And if you're in hardship, like double down. If you're in the wilderness, like double down, be faithful. It could always turn into a second 40 years. It's like, and I find myself plenty of times praying that I'll learn my lesson really quickly so I could just move on. Like whatever I'm supposed to learn right here.
Right.
Help me learn it right now.
Well,
so
it's funny. That is
graduate from the 5th grade and move on. And the thing that's funny is the 2 lessons that you can never learn quickly are patience and endurance.
Oh my goodness. That's so true. We have a baby. So baby cries at night and you think, okay, God, I get it. I'm supposed to be patient, but could you just help her go to sleep? And God's like, no. It's patience and endurance.
What I'm gonna help you do is get up.
She actually needs you to go.
Yeah, you're gonna get up. You're gonna show that sleep does not rule you.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a little sleep fast.
Yeah.
But this is the way it is.
Yeah.
So we make our choices and then we march faithfully. Then guys who second guess, like there's no fruit there. There's no fruit in looking down other doors. Like, well, what if I had taken that job in Des Moines or done whatever? It's like it can be fine to wonder. It can be healthy to watch the game film and say, hey, I screwed up here and here and here, and I have to improve. It's like, because that's what God has for you right there. So you have to learn wisdom. You have to grow in your sophistication and your wisdom after mistakes.
Because there is a flip side to getting older, and the flip side to getting older is those people who do not mature. Their wine that turns into vinegar.
Yep.
And you think of one of those people being 600, 800 years old and
a TikTok influencer 600 years later.
Can you imagine just looking back and thinking, I missed every opportunity and I lost everything I had? And
I built nothing. I did nothing for my people.
Right.
Et cetera. So on.
Yeah. That perspective, I do feel like stories, that's a skill that reading a story teaches you or is trying to teach you. Trying to be like, hey, get out of this page
Yep.
and view the bigger perspective. Let the character grow, or notice the weakness. Don't be the person who's stuck on the page with their flaw in the same situation where you think, oh no, Elizabeth, Mrs. Bennett is doing the thing again that she does.
Yeah.
Despite having her daughter have run off with Wickham, she's still doing the same thing.
Our ability to receive narrative moments and to be changed by them and bettered by them is critical.
That's great.
It's really, really critical. If we don't learn from them and we are not bettered by them, then, we're just a cautionary tale for other people.
So it's very important that you recognize narrative moments and don't let them rip you up so that you don't have to go back to your kids.
And then acknowledge fault and move on.
Yeah.
God takes you from where you are, not where you should be. And okay, you made the wrong choice. You're doing the wrong thing. How do you learn? How do you repent, improve?
Yeah,
grow wiser.
With kids, it's key
on.
too, because sometimes as a dad, you're like, the kids don't get it. This situation is really bad right now. All these things went wrong and we have to fix it. And you can really ruin a situation fast by getting that myopic on what's going wrong instead of realizing, hey, I've got 6 people watching me deal with this hardship right now.
Yeah. And we have to kind of always stop ourselves from wondering what would happen if God had given us something different.
Yeah.
And focus on what he did give us and what we need to learn and what we need to do and how do we serve the other people in our lives and march onward.
Fantastic.
Becoming more like him.
Fantastic quote I think we have on a poster in our house is that comparison is the thief of joy. It's like, if you want to be a happy person, comparing is not the way to do that. No. Sidelong glances, the envy right there is a brutal thief of everything.
I think I may have used this analogy in the podcast before. I know I have with my kids. I know I have with some of my athletes. I know I've used it before, but we can all understand in our hearts what it would be like to be walking down the street and see a lotto ticket in the gutter and pick it up and realize we just won $10 million.
Some of us may even have wished for that.
Yeah. Check your numbers, get on your phone, look and be like, oh my gosh, this lotto ticket, I just won $10 million. Now, 2 things here. Somebody dropped it.
Yeah.
Somebody lost that. Somebody else was holding 10 million and it fluttered out of their pocket and is in the gutter.
They paid for it.
Yeah. And you're sitting here holding $10 million and you immediately are quite spiritual. You're thanking God. You're fired up. And somebody next to you walks another 10 feet and picks up a different one and wins $1 billion. Immediately, it's like, wait, what? I stopped for the $10 million ticket. There was $1 billion ticket right there. The human heart is a greasy, awful little thing.
Yeah, we're bad.
We could receive $10 million and within 45 seconds go from absolute euphoria to all the way down envy, depression, and resentment because somebody else was given more than we were given. Neither of us deserved it. Neither of us bought our own ticket. Neither of us did anything to merit this. These are 2 unmerited wins, right? $1 billion versus 10 million. And we could immediately get jealous and resentful and start comparing, looking sideways. And the fact is, everybody who exists already picked up that lotto ticket, has already won $10 million.
I see this is the analogy.
Yeah. Everybody's already here.
We
you
got
exist.
We're
in
on
space
the ride.
Time.
Yeah.
You are in God's permanent narrative. The narrative that will never be untold, that will never be erased. We were all chosen to be here. We didn't do a thing except for be given life, be given existence beyond life, existence. We exist. And we exist in a place where chocolate and peanut butter mix. We exist in a place where, joy exists, where rain after a hot day, rain on asphalt exists. That smell is here. It's like there's dogs are real and hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like comedy is a thing. Clouds are ridiculous. It's like we exist here. And like I talk about in Notes from the Tilt-A-Whirl, in every procreative act, there are, how many possible people
that did not
become. Like how many potentialities were there? And you were the one.
Right.
Of all those potentialities that God called into existence out of a much worse odds than lotto. It's just, it's crazy.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we've got our $10 million ticket and we look sideways and somebody else got an undeserved $1 billion ticket and was like, why? I can't believe in a God who lets me suffer like this.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So
now,
anyway,
now do sorrow for us though. What, I mean, I think there's a sense in which, bad stuff happens to everybody, but there are some people, it seems like God is uniquely called to turn sorrow into something amazing. And I feel like, and that's hard to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, it is and it isn't. It's hard to talk about and have people not react negatively, but it's not hard to talk about.
That's what I meant. What do you mean by that? You just mean it. Everything you've said still goes for that. You still are put in this place. You still have the doorways. You still have the actions God wants you to do.
Yeah. And you also are going to stand before the judgment seat and be asked what return you got on that investment, on that sorrow.
Yeah.
So, it's like we know that when vines struggle, wine is better. We know that same thing's true of grain and whiskey. Like we know that to be the case. We hate it with people. People who have really suffered and found God, like have a perspective and have a richness to their wisdom that others do not. They just don't. And so, like this is one of those things where you're like, okay, so what did God give his own son? Like
the furnace of affliction.
A lot. Yeah. The literal original crucible.
Yeah.
Like this is the furnace of affliction. This is the path to glory.
Yeah.
So glory in the suffering, when the path to glory, it always involves suffering and hardship and trial. Like that's what makes it glorious, because it is a resurrection out of all this. It is an amazing wine out of this ridiculous drought and barren dirt. It is, it's miraculous. It's just this Easter morning story. And so when people suffer, when people have loss, whether it's suffering on a stub toe level or suffering on a really, really wrenching, lose a child level, whether it's stub toe or the loss of a child, there's only ever two choices. And it's either curse God and die, or the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Yeah.
It's either try to become more like him, like bless him and try to live faithfully through this valley of the shadow of death, or curse God and die. Just be over it. And I've seen plenty of people who are real ready to curse God and die over the stub toe, let alone over actual, like real trial. There's tons of people.
Yep.
I mean, I have made a habit of, I've had a lot of conversations about this. Let's just say, I hate it when people complain about the weather. I hate it so much.
I think we've had a whole episode on
I hate it.
On weather.
I hate it so much. And I will tell people very quickly when they complain about the weather, I'd be like, well, tell it to God. Write it on your comment card, drop it in the complaints box.
Right now we have billowing smoke from burning vineyards, I believe. The Coulter's Creek winery burned down.
We had a winery go up. We've had some wildfires and some canyons around here, not far from here. There's people having actual trials, like real suffering right now. Everywhere there are people having real trials, real suffering. And when you see it in microcosm, we understand it. We understand it. Like when we got the Olympics going right now, when somebody wants to be the best in the world, you want to be the best in the world. Is that road without pain? Is there any road to the best in the world without struggle, suffering, trial, hardship, intense pain tolerance?
There's probably more pain than in being the worst in the world at a particular event.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's relatively easy to be the worst in the world, but you just feel sorry for yourself and a ton of self-pity that you're built like the beanbag you're sitting in. It's like that's
I'm reminded of this having seen this is not to ruin your moment, but Jason Tatum getting benched for game one of, he's one of the best in the world, but not good enough to play.
I saw he was the MVP.
The MVP of the conference finals.
of the championship.
Of the championship, yeah.
And Steve Kerr's like, yeah, my bad. I saw some memes that were basically, like of Tatum saying, what would you expect from a Kamala supporter?
Oof.
He's an idiot.
He's like, I put my lineups together and you sit.
You sit. I missed you in the rotation. And Jaylen Brown, his teammate, was stuck back.
Sorry,
Jaylen was. I was gonna say Jaylen Brown was the MVP, and he got left off the team. And three of his teammates got to go. So everybody's got a bucket they can cry into about their lotto ticket not being big enough. Like we all do. Yeah. Everybody is like, well, if I had a slightly better metabolism, if my wife was a little bit more supportive. If my boss was a little nicer, if people just appreciated me more and rewarded me.
Well, that one's true. Right?
Yeah, always for all of us, right? We all can cry into a bucket that our lotto ticket was just a little too small. But when people have legitimate hardship, they're on the path to glory or they're on the path to cursing God and dying.
Sure.
One or the other. There's not a neutral place. Either incrementally moving towards
what's crazy is you can get there. You get to either of those two places as well. It's not like you're on the path to glory and you don't have the ability to get there.
Yeah. And then remember and remind yourself that every single person on this planet has a death scene coming. Every single person on this planet is going to lose every single person they love.
Yeah.
Everybody you love is going to die. You're all going to die. But the point is, people will look around and be like, why do I have it so hard? When Johnny looks so happy over there. And it's like, don't worry. He's going to walk this road in his own time, in his own way. We're all here. We're all these stupid little wriggly worms that are all going to turn to soup. And hopefully turn to butterflies. We're all these dragonfly nymphs on this plane. So when people have real grief, real suffering, real trial, it's like those are the two choices. When I found out about my brain tumor and was going through that process, plenty of people would want to ask me about it. And the thing I hated the most was talking about it and I didn't like having to converse with people. But I was like, well, I have been given this. I've been given this publicly beyond my own control. So
that's right. Because everyone found out about it.
It was this choice of whether to go through this privately was taken away. I'm going through this publicly. I'm supposed to get a return on these conversations. I'm supposed to do this. And the thing that I found myself saying a lot to people, and at first I said it on accident. I didn't realize what I was saying, was that it actually is a really healthy experience. It's like, well, that's literally the opposite of true. It's not healthy to have a brain tumor. It's the opposite of healthy to have a brain tumor and have to go through it. But it's a very healthy experience to just be reminded of like, okay, so none of this is mine.
Sure.
And I've been given it for this long. What kind of return am I going to get? I'm going to deal with this brain tumor, the consequences of the brain tumor for I don't know how long. I don't know if it's going to be quick and I'm going to die. I don't know if it's going to be a long struggle. I don't know if I'm going to recover. I don't know any of these things. I just have to be prepared to find the glory in it.
Yeah.
Like to walk through the suffering and find the glory in it and get a return on it. And actually really, really push to do that. I had a couple of people say when Tilt-A-Whirl first came out, people say, well, yeah, this is all well and good, but we'll see what you say when you've gone through something. And then I wrote Death by Living, still having not gone through anything real significant, but experienced loss and other things. And then it's like, okay, now like put up or shut up time. Shouldn't have written that book. So
never home.
Yeah. But the thing is when you go through it, you can like find the glory. You can walk the path of suffering towards glory, knowing that there's a bigger prize at the end of it.
Right. I mean, it reminds me of my grandpa, saying, "How are you doing? Better than I deserve," over and over again, which sounds fake when you.
Yeah. I recently told my son about that and he started using it because he's got a lot of pain, a lot of issues. And he started using that with people because he doesn't want to tell people. And people are like, "How are you feeling?" It's like, he doesn't want to tell people.
Well, today it's very painful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, they don't really want to know either. It's like, let me tell you about this, tearing the cartilage in my hip or, whatever I'm dealing with.
Right. So steal the line from the World War II pilot.
Yeah.
Turned farm extension agent.
Better than I deserve.
Better than I deserve.
At first, one of the first times he used it, borrowed from your grandfather, he used it with a trainer who was immediately just didn't understand. And I was like, yeah, it turns out you talk about the gospel pretty quick too.
Right. When you deserve.
What are you talking about? What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
For Christians, they can all say, but is it disingenuous? When you're telling unbelievers that, it actually turns into real conversations pretty quickly. Anyway, when people have actual sorrow and actual trial, they should go read the book of Job and they should honor God and find glory in the suffering and really, really work hard to honor him and image him through that suffering. Or curse God and die, just get it over with.
There's your options.
And if you curse God and die, you're still a cautionary tale for other people. So in the end, you're going to glorify God. In the end, you're going to serve God's purpose in the narrative, but you can do it by via the road that comes with glory, or you can do it via the cautionary tale with your whole life for those around you.
It's a great place to end a Stories or Soul Food episode.
There we go. We out.
Imagine the well-read man. Do you see a machine dressed in tweed, gorging on information? This book is not about becoming that kind of reader. The well-read man wakes up and consults with Moses on his way to work.
And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which hath brought thee out of the land.
He sips his coffee and ponders the wisdom of Hannibal's elephants crossing the Alps. He turns furrow-browed philosophers upside down and takes their lunch money. He changes his oil and deliberates with Peter Drucker about effective management practices. He regales his wife with the tale of Monet's water lilies in the gardens at Giverny. He sings with Sandra Boynton as his toddler's eyes grow heavy. This book is about becoming that man. Be as human as you can be. Learn how to read a book.